Gather round, patriots, and allow me to entertain you with a tale of Big John. If you don't know who Big John is, I mean, this video about sums it up. Big John is famous for being a big fat man. He's basically the guy from the opening scene of Seven, and this glutton in particular goes around to various Chinese and Indian restaurants and reviews their food for Instagram and Twitter. And it's on Twitter where he's met his match, the online right. Because if you look at a Big John, you'd think that he is the North FC meme come to life. He looks like Baz, and you'd think he would say, "Love me missus, love me country, ate me immigrants, simple as." Instead, Big John is being astroturfed by pretty much every establishment media apparatus in Britain to act as containment for the growing, dispossessed, white working class outrage about Britain's sclerotic political system and the repeated betrayals that its politicians have inflicted upon its people when they voted in every election since 1974 for less migration and received record numbers of third world foreign dependents instead. And Big John's argument, and I am not trying to be reductive here, but it really does boil down to this, is, well, you're opposed to immigration, but have you thought about the food? As Rowan Atkinson once joked, I think we have the recipe. Now, Big John has made it a big show of going around to different Chinese takeaways, particularly while the flag protests, the Operation Raise the Colours, has been going on. He's appeared to be sort of propelled to stardom around that time. It's quite suspicious, really. And notice that he keeps going to specifically Chinese takeaways. He's been to a few Indians as well, but Chinese takeaways to combat anti-immigration sentiment. Now, I will raise one thing here. Not all immigrants are equal. If we look at the breakdown of data from Denmark and the Netherlands, your average Western European and Anglosphere, so Australian, English, British, American, Canadian, New Zealander, all heritage of those places, of course, immigrants are net tax contributors across their lifetime. They commit very little crime, and they usually integrate because of the language and because of common law and a unspoken sense of decency. They usually operate very well in those civilizations. That doesn't mean that if I were to move to Japan, for example, that I would be Japanese, nor would my culture and my instincts and my faith recreate the nation of Japan any more than a million Japanese people moving to Britain would be able to recreate Britain as it historically stood. But it does mean that when, for example, we take in 100,000 Hong Kongers, aside from one particular vocal leftist who decided to rather ungratefully accuse Britain of the crimes of colonialism and oppression, the Hong Kongers haven't really caused any problems. And so if you notice, whenever people talk about mass immigration, yes, it's about numbers, yes, it's about economics, and yes, it's about culture, but people don't really complain about the Chinese very much. Now, bringing in Chinese nationals brings its whole suite of its own problems. I mean, look at how universities have become unduly reliant on lots of student finance from Chinese students that academics themselves say that they can't feel possible to fail in their degrees, despite them barely turning up to class, turning in shoddy coursework and exams, and barely speaking English, because the universities are so reliant on the funding. Look at the fact that the CCP has established Confucius Institutes all over universities to try and censor campus debates, or set up its own private police stations in various Chinatowns across Canada and the US and the UK. And of course, there's this massive Chinese spying scandal that's currently playing out in the Labour Party. By the by, other than these considerations, when people complain about migration to the UK, they're usually talking about the Middle East, Pakistan, India, and Africa, because they are the most culturally disruptive, economically costly, and politically consequential aggrieved minority groups that have been brought into this country against the wishes of the natives. So it's very funny that Big John and whoever wants to push him to the fore of British political debate is focusing so heavily on Chinese takeaways. And I would just simply like to ask Big John that if you are treating immigrants as one giant vat, this indistinguishable slop that you will no doubt fill your trough with, how many Pakistani rape gangs is it worth having in this country for you to eat 2 Chinese takeaways a day? Because that really is the calculation that we're going through right now. How many abused children is it worth to you, John, so that you can have a curry? Because I don't think that we actually need to have both of those things together. I think we're perfectly capable of recreating foreign cuisine from scratch, from cookbooks, without importing infinite foreign criminals and benefits dependents. Unfortunately, Big John exists to try to keep the white working class on the plantation that says, if you want a takeaway, you must accept open borders. and this is why he has earned the name, and I haven't used this myself because I think it's a slight bit crass, House Gammon. He's basically Gammonzilla with a leash, brought to heel by the regime that has betrayed and been intent on replacing us for a very long time. And the reason I'm taking shots at Big John, I wouldn't care if he was just, some sort of TikToker or Instagram influencer, or if he was just posting pointless tweets. But he has been platformed by the BBC and LBC, presumably paid appearance fees to come on and sit in front of the camera and act like the paragon of working class patriotism. And all that amounts to is calling you a racist if you don't like mass migration.
I love my country. I'm a proud Englishman. And when you see the flags going up, I can see why people are doing it, because a lot of institutions around the country won't put up the flags. So people are sort of taking it amongst themselves. And it's normal people that are doing it. But every now and again, it blows over. You get the isolated incident, which isn't good, it is upsetting.
Note there what Big John is saying. What Big John's saying is, I understand your concerns. I like the flag as well. I wave it whenever the football's on. But if you wave it in an unapproved way, unapproved by the regime that has imported limitless foreign nationals at our expense and against our wishes, who call literally everything racist, including you expressing even the mildest preference for your people, history, heritage, culture, and country, then, oh, you can't be doing that now, because if you're racist, I can't have my curry. This is how, 1, pathetic immigration discourse has gotten in this country, 2, how patronising the mainstream media are towards the working class, and 3, how utterly just repugnant this person is. I mean, look at him. Not just that he's grotesquely overweight in a time of economic stagnation, a climate where the likes of the BBC constantly bang on about how people need to turn to food banks to survive, and then they have this guy who eats multiple takeaways every single day and a spread that could feed a small African country. But his inability to control his own vices, being food addiction, is a proxy for his own cowardice, his own lack of virtue. Because later on, we'll see how he says he's going to fight for his country. He can't even run a lap of a playground. So, excuse me if I don't take this obvious pantomime, this mukbang minstrel show, very seriously.
See a picture of a Chinese takeaway in York saying, "Go home."
Yeah, I saw that online, and I think the lady had been running it for 15 years. She's lived here, she's worked hard, and I'm associated with Chinese takeaways, but I would have felt the same whether it had been an Indian, Caribbean, Mexican, Greek, Turkish. People that are working here shouldn't be targeted like that. No one should be targeted like that.
So, it does not matter whether or not someone has been here for a substantial amount of time or just arrived yesterday. If they are living in sectarian enclaves, if they are living wholly apart from the native population, whether they are hostile or simply out of habit recreating their culture and the conditions of their home country in my country, then I'm sorry, but they aren't wanted here. Because they have not integrated in any meaningful fashion, their descendants will not assimilate to be indistinguishable from our population, and by practicing their culture they will not recreate my country, and so my country will disappear without us ever voting to be dispossessed of our own country. And I don't want anyone smashing up any businesses, I don't think we should be unduly cruel to these people, but you really can see how the media are pushing Big John so that any argument about immigration is yet again relegated to racism, because otherwise you won't have your Chinese takeaway. And this patronising message has been amplified yet again by LBC, and this was the clip that sparked a lot of controversy over the last week, because Big John says that he's going to fight for his country and reclaim what the flag truly means.
I've always said that I'm as patriotic as anyone in this country. I would happily die for this country if it was being invaded tomorrow. There's a lot of frustration because normal sort of English, British people feel they can't fly their flag, and that's when it causes problems. We should be able to fly it, but when it crosses over into threatening and hateful behaviour, that's when it's wrong. We should reclaim our flag. The flag, no one should feel uncomfortable seeing the St George's Cross or seeing the Union Jack.
But people do feel uncomfortable because they don't feel it's their flag. That's why they've been taking them down in places like Tower Hamlets and Birmingham, John. What you're trying to do is keep those hostile people who hate our flag hate our people, hate our country, in our country, at our expense, just so you can stuff your face. What Big John is Squealer from Animal Farm. He's a fat pig who will justify the worst possible atrocities of the regime just so he can fill his trough and be guaranteed to be on the side of the naked use of power against the native population. He is, for all intents and purposes, a big fat traitor. So when I wrote in response to this glutton insists that you aren't allowed to have a preference for your people, history and culture because he wants to gulp down 2 Chinese takeaways a day until his arteries resemble the Ganges, our morally bankrupt regime couldn't ask for a better avatar than this pig, who isn't fit to fight for anything but will demand you side with a government that inflicts preventable atrocities on children just so he can fill his trough. It got a fair amount of attention. It got nearly 500,000 views, 5,000 likes, fair few hundred reposts. However, Big John decided to respond to this by saying, how does someone with a good number of followers get so little views and interactions? Is @Connor Tomlinson buying his followers? Now, if you notice here, I've taken this from a screenshot, and I had to because John deleted the tweet. And it's probably because he realises it's legally actionable, because no, I've never bought my followers. You can't just make up an unsubstantiated accusation, John. And what this shows is that Big John has been amplified beyond his ability to actually navigate in political spaces. Because I have this rule. I try not to say anything that I can't back up with a source. Other than if I'm making a joke, I'm not just going to throw out wild and frankly libelous accusations against people, because I understand that I'm operating on essentially a tightrope because my government is acting somewhere between the Islamic Caliphate of Iran and the Soviet Union, and so will look for any excuse to incarcerate me that it can get. And so you have to be rather careful because, 1, I face the threat of imprisonment if I say the wrong thing, but 2, if you're engaging in public debate, your credibility is on the line if you say something obviously refutable and absurd, as John himself did. So I responded to John with this: 160k views at the time, 2,000 likes at the time, tweeted in a time zone 8 hours ahead of Britain where most people are asleep. I was in Japan. I would be shocked at how bad at counting you are, John, but that explains your grotesque relationship with calories. Pretty rich accusation when you're being astroturfed by the BBC and LBC as the working class sales pitch for demographic replacement and the crimes and costs caused by it. Your entitlement to a curry matters much less than preventing Pakistani rape gangs. You're going on a diet and they're getting deported. And as you can see yet again, despite Big John having, 70 to 80,000 followers? I'm blocked, so I can't see. And me having about 96 to 97,000, I am dwarfing him in analytics. So his claim is not just false, but it's also absurd on the face of it. And this is why his argument isn't really washing. This is why he's getting so much backlash on X. This is why he is being pushed by the likes of BBC and LBC desperately. Because it turns out, just taking the restraining bolts off of discourse when Elon Musk bought X has allowed people to voice their perfectly reasonable concerns about immigration and the state of their country, and this organically attracts more support than whatever containment agent is propelled to the front of the queue by the mainstream media this week. And that is John, in this case. And he, again, doubled down. Mate, your engagement, terrible. He missed an is, but you probably can't see his keyboard over his chins. Per followers, come on, admit you're cheating. It's your John. Just admit it. Yet again, 3.8 thousand, 70-odd thousand to 80-odd thousand followers. And I just said, that's all right, John, keep lying by all means. If you'll lie about me, then it's no wonder you'll smear people as racist and ignore all the atrocities caused by immigration just so you can continue gorging yourself to death on takeaways. You have no integrity, no courage, no virtue. It's shameful. Now, I said again that I had to screenshot John's original tweet, and the reason I did is because 1, he deleted it, but 2, he blocked me. So it turns out that John didn't like the engagement he got, and he's been repeatedly ratioed over the last few days because people really are getting sick of being patronised about the aesthetic crimes, costs, and consequences of mass migration unfolding in their daily lives by someone who is obviously a media plant who insists that you have to endanger your wife, sister, and daughter just so he can eat chicken chow mein. And if it wasn't demonstrable that this is John's first day on the internet yet, he then decided to get into a fight with Zia Yusuf because Yusuf tweeted, "Still can't believe the media found some guy who also says Bosh," referencing Thomas Skinner, of course, and put him everywhere to spread their propaganda and counter-signal Thomas Skinner. And the reason Thomas Skinner has been counter-signaled is because he is a very popular, organically so, social media star. He was couple of years ago, arguing against Narinder Kaur on Good Morning Britain breakfast television, waving the English flag without any shame, and then has since befriended James Orr and Vice President J.D. Vance and made his intention to run for London Mayor pretty clear as a patriotic barrow boy, one of the Londoners, one of the Cockneys chased out to Essex by mass demographic displacement caused by mass migration, and he's more than likely to actually have a good innings for it, considering how everyone hates Sadiq Khan. He is a household name. He's just been on Strictly and got dragged through the mud for that, for clearly political reasons. And so now they're trying to push Big John to reclaim the word Bosh, to reclaim the flag, to reclaim working class patriotism as something that is actually beneficial to the regime that supports mass migration and the complete destruction of our country. And so Yusuf pointed this out, and then Big John decided to make this video on X.
Zia, Yusuf, set up a meeting. I'm going to come and meet you. The only politician I'm going to talk to is you. I'm going to put you right in the error of your ways because you need telling. All right? So set up a meeting and I'll come and meet you.
Mental how you can be famous for being fat on the internet and then demand to have a meeting with one of the most prominent faces of the party that's consistently topping the polls and likely to be the next government. Like, the entitlement is unbelievable. This is clearly someone who has been fed their own hype and is too stupid to understand that they're basically an industry plant. Now, the reason I'm playing this from the account The Grift Report here is because Big John deleted it. Yet again. He has a habit of doing this. He has a habit of getting into arguments and then deleting his posts when he can't handle the backlash. And apparently someone reported it to the police. Basically, ironically, taking a leaf out of Zia Yusuf's playbook when engaging with Rupert Lowe. Now, I think reporting it to police is cringe because it's clearly not a threat, but Big John himself isn't capable of engaging in political discourse without the support of state-funded media apparatuses or the support of LBC, funded by Global, the largest advertising conglomerate. And so what it shows, yet again, Big John, by being morbidly obese, shows that he has no self-control, no courage, no virtue, no gumption, and so he's actually a pretty accurate representative of the current regime, wearing patriotism like a skin suit, trying to co-opt the flag for women's football and the Olympic opening ceremony, while engaging in mass demographic vandalism, economic impoverishment, and calling you racist when you notice. And when pressed by Gammonzilla or the online right, these people buckle and run and don't know what to say. So I must say, this is ultimately an optimistic segment because we're winning, lads. Like, press the advantage. If the rejoinder to our arguments is this bad, this desperate, and this weak, physically, emotionally, I think we're going to win. I'll finish on this observation from Fleur here. Big John, constantly counter-signalling Reform UK, platformed by the BBC and LBC to say that if you wave the flag for anything but the football or being inclusive of immigrants, that you're a racist, comes shortly after the Cabinet Office admit that they're paying social media influencers to post narratives that are favourable to the government. This isn't to say that John is one of the recipients of those payments, but as Fleur points out, she would tweet this if she were a social media influencer who is receiving money from the Cabinet Office to push pro-migration narratives. So it would be pretty ironic if John were to accuse me of buying followers and being inauthentic, and meanwhile the taxpayers footing the bill for his takeaways. But the moral of Big John's story is simple. Don't become so fat and weak and pathetic that you are willing to excuse any atrocity inflicted upon you by your treacherous government just so you can eat yourself to death.